scooter heads, to the Electric Scooter Podcast, episode number 22. And we're flipping the script. We're flipping scripting. Using a whole new microphone setup. Hey, if I don't like it, I'll just switch back to my good old Shure SM58. But this time I'm doing an MXR, and you may hear a little bit more ambient noise, but it may pick up a little more nuances of my voice. Who knows? Who's to say? If I didn't mention it, you'd probably never notice anything, but we're going to give it a shot. And also this time, rather than having an interview, I am going to talk about a specific scooter. That scooter is the Fluid Freeride Horizon. Now, what category does this scooter fall under? There's a lot of different things that you could say. People call them mid-level, upper mid-level. I would say, while that is true, I would kind of classify it, for reasons I'll explain later, as sort of a leisure scooter. Or I think it would make a good commuter scooter. Now, most people who start out riding scooters are probably going to start with a Xiaomi or a GoTrax or maybe a Segway Ninebot, which I do recommend. And if you're looking at a first scooter, the Fluid Freeride Horizon and the Segway Ninebot Max are probably the two I would be looking at for a number of reasons. Let's compare them first just a little bit, because I've ridden both extensively. I think the Segway looks a little cleaner, whereas the Fluid Freeride Horizon looks like it was assembled by throwing together a bunch of different parts, which necessarily isn't a bad look in a Mad Max kind of way. I'm not saying it's not sleek. I'm simply saying that it has more of a rugged, it's solid black, and you can see the parts, the individual parts, they're not molded onto the frame like the Segway Ninebot Max. So the Segway Ninebot Max looks a little bit cleaner, but it also looks kind of plasticky. The way the LED screen, informational screen, gives information is kind of neat and kind of slick, whereas the Fluid Freeride Horizon uses the QSS4 trigger throttle. The Segway Ninebot Max uses a thumb throttle, and that gives you very different driving dynamics. So this is not a comparison between those two scooters, but if you're looking at a leisure type scooter, maybe a fun scoot on a short commute, then these are the two you probably should be looking at, but I'll probably do the Segway Ninebot Max in another episode. Right now, we're talking about the Fluid Freeride Horizon. I'll do some pros and cons, and we'll talk about first the scooter itself. It is a clone of the 08, so you can look at either one of those, check prices, check dealerships, see what you prefer. I bought mine from Fluid Freeride. That's why I call it the Fluid Freeride Horizon. They're down in Florida. And I say this every single podcast. If you are going to purchase a scooter, do yourself a favor and buy from a reputable distributor in the United States. So if something happens, you'll have somebody on the other end of the phone when you call to be reassured or figure out how to replace a part. Speaking of replacing parts, the Fluid Freeride Horizon does have plug-and-play parts for the most part. Again, this is not a comparison, but if you'd like to compare them, the Electric Scooter Guide has an outstanding YouTube video that directly compares the two. So let's talk about the Horizon first, which I own. It was my first scooter. I didn't go through the natural progression of buying the cheap bottom line Xiaomi, GoTrax, Highboy, and then go to the Fluid Freeride Horizon, and then go to the Wolf Warrior. I did it in weird order for my own reasons. I bought the Fluid Freeride Horizon just to kind of dip my toe into the scooter world to see if it was for me. I live in Las Vegas, and we don't have electric rental scooters all over the place like some major cities have. I saw them in St. Petersburg, Florida, saw them in Portland, Oregon, Los Angeles, Seattle. A lot of cities have them. Phoenix, Arizona, but we don't have them in Las Vegas. So dipping my toe in the scooter water, I just went ahead and talked to Julian on the telephone. He tried to talk me into a Mantis, which is also made by Cabo, same as Wolf Warrior, not the same as Fluid Freeride Horizon. But I didn't listen to him. And for certain, the main reason was money. I think I paid about $750 for my Horizon, and I think it was like $1,100 or $1,200 for the Mantis. And the Mantis has what kind of tires? Pneumatic, which are awesome, but at least at the time they had tubes in the tires. And tires with tubes in them, although they're better than solid tires dynamically as far as riding and the physics of having more contact surface with the ground, so you're less likely to slip and fall, especially in the rain, the tubes can get pinched into the rim. So through no fault of your own, not even riding over a tack or a nail or glass, you can just develop a flat tire. And a flat tire on a scooter is a hassle unless you're very mechanically inclined or you have a scooter shop nearby, which most of us do not. So I try to go with the pneumatic tubeless tires as much as I can. However, saying that, the Horizon has a solid tire in the rear and a pneumatic tire in the front, and that pneumatic tire does have a tube, and yes, it did develop a flat on its own, just by virtue of the physics of having a tube inside of another round piece of rubber with metal enclosing it. They tend to pinch, get holes, and go flat. I was able to fix it. It was a little bit of a hassle, but I was eventually able to do it. So why did I pick the Fluid Freeride Horizon? Well, it does look a little more rugged, and it is a little more rugged than a lot of the other scooters. It has that, metal feel, and it is solid black. It folds small. It has good handlebar grips. They're nice and wide. The handlebar grips, you can unscrew them and fold them down to the stem, which really helps with portability. The folding mechanism is pretty solid. Again, I'll talk about a couple of these things. I will reiterate in the pros and cons, and I'll elaborate a little further. It goes about 25 miles per hour. It starts out really slow, slower than most scooters, but it seems to pick up torque a little bit, 10 to 12 miles an hour, and you can get it up to 25 miles per hour. I weigh 185 pounds, so depending on your weight, anything you hear about scooter specifications, by the way, is going to depend on the gradient of hill that you're on, how much you weigh, the wind. We found out from talking to Zero to Epic that he was blown away, pun intended, by how much the wind affected his mileage. It dropped incredibly when he was flying into a headwind. So the Fluid Freeride Horizon, I keep saying that. Maybe I should just say 08. It's so much easier to say. They are pretty much the same scooter. Has 3 modes on your QS S4 trigger style throttle. I don't like the QSS4 just because the i3 made by Mini Motors is available on a lot of scooters, and it's way better. But most people who know even more about scooters than I do will tell you they have no problem with a QSS4. It just looks kind of flimsy and cheap. And there is a screw on the bottom that you always got to make sure is tight, because if it ever comes out or loosens too much, there's a tiny springed cotter type pin inside there that is just a real pain to get it resprung. It took me, I tried it hours, and then my buddy was visiting, and between the two of us, one person holding one end and me tying dental floss to the other end, really, I'm not kidding, we were actually able to get it back on there. But if you talk to any distributor, they're just say, oh yeah, send us $49 and we'll send you a new one. Again, plug and play. So save yourself $40-50 and the hassle if you can do it yourself. Are there videos on YouTube on how to do it? No, even though it's the most ubiquitous throttle type and LCD screen in the world. They're on so many scooters. I don't know the exact statistics, but it's got to be 70%. Has 3 modes, 1, 2, and 3. If you're like me, you're just going to immediately go to 3 and just use that all the time, because the first 2 modes are just too slow. And why do you want to top out your speed? Which is, as measured by the Electric Scooter Guide, 0 to 15 in 4.7 seconds, gets up to 20 miles an hour in just below 8 seconds, and it stops from 15 miles per hour to 0 in 23 feet on brakes that are not hydraulic. I normally recommend hydraulic brakes, and I do still recommend hydraulic brakes, but you're going to pay a premium for those hydraulic brakes. They're worth every penny. But if you're only going 20 miles an hour, maybe 25, a cable brake is okay. The Horizon only has a single brake. Well, actually, it kind of has 2, because it has a drum brake and a regenerative brake that supposedly will put some electricity back to your battery when it's engaged. But it only has one pull handle, and that's on your left side. I don't have any issue with it. You know, it is what it is. It's okay. And for that price range, that's kind of what you expect. And drum brakes, people may put down the poor old ancient technology drum brake, but I'll tell you something. Since they're fully enclosed, they're pretty good against dust and water and things like that. So they are going to be low maintenance. Now, since it's non-hydraulic, you are going to have to maintain that cable and tighten it up every once in a while. And after I don't know how many years of use, replace it, oil it, that kind of thing. With hydraulics, probably never going to do that. Now, let's talk suspension. It has a front spring type suspension that's inside the stem. Seems to work pretty good. And in the rear, it has a dual hydraulic suspension, which again I rate as pretty good, but it has to be, because again, your rear tire is solid. I don't know if it's a honeycomb. I don't think it is. It doesn't feel like it. So the one thing that is good about it is if you want zero maintenance, you're never going to get a flat. Again, I had a flat tire in the front, but you're never going to get a flat. I'll tell you what is significantly horrible about a rear tire that is solid, and this has not happened to me because I'm careful, and that is if you go into a power slide or something, there's an emergency and you have to slam on the brake, and you get a flat spot on that rear tire, guess what you're listening to until you replace that tire, which is going to be maintenance. Kind of defeats the purpose. You're going to be listening to that wabada, 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 and you are going to feel it. I should mention that the Horizon comes with 2 options, 2 different batteries. I think it's about $80 more to opt for the bigger battery, and I did, but you only get about an extra 5 miles of range on the larger battery. You get about 26 under good conditions if you weigh, again, maybe 180 pounds. And with the cheaper battery, you're going to get maybe 21. But, again, that's as measured by Electric Scooter Guide. Because guess what? I don't measure my miles. When I go for a ride, I come back and plug it in and charge it up, so it's almost always full. So the weight, 40 pounds with the smaller battery and 42 pounds with the slightly heavier battery. It's not an issue. I mean, unless you have some sort of handicap with your arms or somewhere on your body to where you can't lift things, it is pretty easy and simple to get into a trunk or a back of a truck. Folding mechanism, portability, again, along those lines. The folding mechanism is excellent. It's a common problem on so many scooters that, everything's great, except for the folding mechanism, because the folding mechanism is at the base of the stem, and that just causes all kinds of problems with stem wobble, and even some of the Mantis earlier I've heard had issues with stems breaking or cracking. And I think to this day, I've heard reports that they still squeak when you're riding. So that is no bueno. So I started to talk earlier about my progression, why I got the Horizon first, and then I went, instead of a larger model, I actually went to a cheaper model. I bought a GoTrax off of Amazon because it was only $250. And friends come over sometimes, and I need an extra scooter for them. And it's super light. It doesn't get a lot of miles. I may maybe get 8 or 10 miles if somebody's light and the wind's behind them. But I found when I've made road trips a couple times, I just felt like bringing a light, easy scooter that would charge fairly fast, didn't take up a lot of space, and then having that as a backup scooter. The GoTrax, I'm not going to tell you it's a Wolf Warrior or a Dualtron Thunder. It's not, but it does serve its purpose, and it gets used. So there is a place for these cheap, low-end scooters as long as you buy correctly. So this brings us right back to how I would classify the Fluid Freeride Horizon /08. I call it a leisure scoot. Again, if you listen to the Electric Scooter Guide, and a lot of they call it a mid-range, upper mid-range. I don't know that it's upper mid-range. I would say these days upper mid-range is $1,200 to $1,400. Some of the Apollo offerings, or as we mentioned earlier, the Mantis. So let's go with some pros and cons. The pros of the Fluid Freeride Horizon /08. It has long range. 26 miles is pretty good. In this price range, in fact, I think it can't be beat. It doesn't wobble a lot. It has the awesome folding mechanism that works pretty well. The suspension is good, again, but you've got to have it because you do have a solid rear tire. Regenerative brake is a good thing. It can hold 265 pounds. That's the max load. So if you're a human being that weighs 265 pounds, and I suspect even over that, you're going to be okay with this scooter. I think it looks pretty good, kind of Mad Max looking. It's fairly low maintenance because of the drum brake, solid rear tire, very commonly used QSS4 throttle module. It has a solid stem. The portability is great. It has rear lights in the back that blink when you step on the brakes. And that is, I've been night riding with folks, and even I don't usually see myself on the scooter, so I don't notice it so much. But when someone else is riding it, I think, that's kind of neat. That's a good little safety feature. You can go into the throttle settings. There are program settings, or what we call P settings, and you can make adjustments to cruise control and some of the basic settings. It has a little USB port. If you put a phone mount on your handlebars, you could actually charge your phone as you're riding. That's kind of cool. I mentioned the grips earlier. They're kind of nice and wide. They flare out towards the end. The way that they wrap their cords, their control cords, is kind of a nice touch. Rather than just wires hanging down, they're wrapped up with this black canvas-looking tape stuff. And that just gives you a little bit of confidence and protection for the cords. Now the cons. I mentioned a couple of these things. You got the tube tire in the front. It's not going to be great in the rain. The tube tire in the front is good in the rain, but the solid tire in the rear will be horrible in the rain. And as far as solid tires, I should also say what goes hand in hand with that is they're not going to corner well. If you're going around a corner fast and there's some gravel or something, you're going to slide out. You got to be a little careful when you're taking corners at sharp angles on this particular scooter. The kickstand, I think it broke maybe the second or third day that I owned it. Just ripped right off. I don't know if it's some kind of pot metal that they're using with two little screws on it, but it is a joke. If you buy one and you're super careful, I don't treat my scooters well, to be honest. I really am harsh on anything I own. It doesn't matter whether it's a guitar or a cell phone or a scooter. They get stress test when Dagwood Streets is the owner. But this kickstand, I think if you're ginger with it, it'll maybe last. I don't know. Another great feature is your handlebar. It has two rings that have threads in them, and you can then fold down your grips, which makes it very portable. That's awesome. Another con, cable brake is not the best. Hydraulic would be better. Oh, here's one, the charging port. And it's at the very front, by your front wheel. So when you have it plugged in and you're charging it, if someone turns the wheel quickly or it falls down, you could snap that right off. It'll hit the cord, your charging cord, and maybe rip it right out of the scooter. 8-inch tires, 10 inches is really the way to go. Again, I think the Segway Ninebot has 10-inch tires. They're also pneumatic, and they also have that goop inside so they don't get flats. Just saying. So there are a lot of competitors to this price range, and a lot of them do have solid tires. So some of these things that I'm saying as cons, you're going to see in other scooters as well, and they're not really that horrible. I don't like that the lights are mounted low. If you're going to mount a light, mount it high so it's effective. Why mount your headlight close to the ground? Makes no sense to me. According to Electric Scooter Guide, it shoots out 34 lux. So if that means anything to you, I can just tell you that by looking at them, they're not super bright. They are okay. But as far as open road worthy at night, not so sure. Also, lastly, let me wind it up with saying that it has no horn. So there are a couple things you're going to want to add to the Horizon or the 08. And that would include a bell. I think a bell, it's just so simple mechanically, and it's the right volume. My Wolf Warrior will blast the purple wig off of an octogenarian crossing the street and maybe give them a heart attack or a stroke. It's too much. And a bell is just a little ding. It just sounds polite and nice. Excuse me, watch out, I'm coming. Not, get out of the way, you idiot, can't you see? Like somebody in a diesel truck rolling coal. So that's it for the Electric Scooter Podcast episode number 22. What do you think? Does my voice sound different? The same? You don't care? I'm a little on the fence. I think I'm probably going to go back to my Shure SM58. There were a couple times my voice was peaking, even though maybe there was an increased nuance to some of the things I was saying. I don't know. Anyway, that's it. New format. You like it? Don't like it? Want me to review other scooters? You like the interviews better? Go to Dagwood Street's YouTube channel and let me know, or dagwoodstreets@gmail.com, or the Electric Scooter Podcast Facebook page. Until next time, keep the shiny side up and the dirty side down.